Hey man, how's
Hey man.
how's it going? We
Good.
haven't really actually spoken to each other today. We've just been
Yeah, I
sat
know.
across silently typing away.
Yeah, we have. We've just, it's been quite quiet at the office with some bursts of noise. We were doing the Zelda video coming soon, which will be really fun.
The Zelda video.
Yeah, that's going to be good.
Do you know what? Actually, the Cartaverse simulation we made is
Yeah.
very versatile and it's so peaceful in there. I kind of jump at any opportunity to try it out.
Yeah, it's the lighting. It's like very bright and well lit. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I guess we've just started the pod. There's a very nonchalant
Yeah.
start. Welcome everybody to episode 7, I believe, of the GPT podcast, the podcast where we talk about AI, the future of technology, while we drink tea. But today, Hugh has been a traitor. What have you got there? Looks
I
like
have
a coffee.
Yeah, I have a coffee. Sorry.
How comes you went for the
everybody.
coffee? Is it called GP coffee now?
It's called GP Starbucks Caramel Macchiato.
Oh,
That's
very
what we're
nice.
rocking today. So
Okay.
there you
I've
go.
been a loyalist.
There's a lot
I've
of
gone,
brand placement going on.
yeah, Starbucks. So
What
you've
have
got a
you
Starbucks caramel macchiato. I've got
Yeah.
a Pucker clean green matcha.
Ah, nice. I had that last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful tea. Right. So, yeah, we've had a very quiet day. However, it's not been quiet in the world of AI.
No.
You have some topics. To be honest, dude, you sent me some topics on WhatsApp. I haven't even looked at them properly. I've probably
Yeah.
seen them on the scroll. There's so much going on every day now. Like as we get ready for this next big push of the product and just everything going crazy, 2 new hires in the office, team of 6.
Yeah.
There's so much going on. It's really hard
Yeah.
to keep track of like what the world is doing, let alone just trying to maintain,
Yeah.
keep track of what Carter is doing. You know?
Yeah. I find I'm opening Twitter more than I open TikTok these days.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm actively refreshing my feed in anticipation of new LLMs being released.
Okay.
There was a time
Interesting.
a few weeks ago where it really did feel like every time I refresh my feed, there was a new LLM at the top of my Twitter feed because
Yeah.
everything was going out so fast.
Yeah, it was like when Stability launched their LLM, and then there was like Hugging GPT on like the same day or the next day, and then weird stuff going on with Llama. It was just like so much happening all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some interesting things going on. I'm really, really excited for Red Pajama to finish training.
What's Red Pajama again?
Okay.
7B model, for the open source 7B model.
Yeah,
Or
they're
no?
going to do different sizes. I think they might go up to 65.
Okay.
So it's this awesome company called Together Compute, or maybe they're just known as Together. And they're basically trying to recreate Llama, but fully open source.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
okay, right. So is this one of the topics that we're talking about?
It's
or is
not.
this-
It's just appeared.
Oh, just okay.
Yeah.
So on this subtopic, then, why is Llama not open source? So it's available to use, but it's not commercial. You can't use it for commercial setting. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, that's right. So it's known as a research release,
Right.
Which is actually quite common. The thing is, it's a very well performing model. If you look at there's a lot of open charts on GitHub and Hugging Face at the moment that basically are like a leadership chart, a bit like a video game.
right?
The leaders in the LLM world, and Llama is like the top 4.
Wow, that's insane.
It's an incredible model, and then you've got things like Alpaca,
Yeah.
which is Llama, but it's fine tuned, and there's all sorts of stuff going on with Llama, with the one restriction, which is that companies can't use it.
Right.
So an individual can use it, but a company can't. So if you've got a graphics card at home, a gaming computer or something, you can run an LLM on your machine, maybe a little bit slow, but and you will get ChatGPT similar performance to ChatGPT, similar, not as
Yeah.
good.
And we've been seeing some like very hidden away communities that are like really interested in the vision of her or the vision of Jarvis or the vision of like Westworld, of being able to talk to have like a human to AI companionship, relationship, friendship, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's already a fairly large community, mainly on like Reddit and 4chan, so in the back channels of the internet, that are basically comparing different models and like running different models just for the ability to have like a friend to talk to or a person to, I don't know, be close to, like Samantha from her. And there's communities like all of the communities collected together is like 500,000 people across Reddit, 4chan, different Discord communities.
Yeah.
So if people are going, especially what I found really interesting was that non-developers, people that are removed from code and removed from like models and stuff, are learning enough to run, like self-run locally a model just to have that experience. And they're using Llama, they're using Pymalion, which is, I think, on Hugging Face. And they're using a few different models just to be able to talk to them, which I find fascinating. And the communities, like these sub-communities are growing. They're getting really big.
Yeah, I think now that there has been a solid consumer-facing breakout app, it's kind of just shone a light on the technology in general.
You're talking about ChatGPT?
Yeah, I'm talking about ChatGPT. Like before that, everything was sort of behind an API, even though it is still. Everything was behind a Python script, you know, and so the barrier of entry was quite high. Or like no one knew what Hugging Face was, and most people still don't. But ChatGPT was something that you could share with your friends and you could talk to no matter what device you were using, which is so accessible. But we've done that topic to death. There's a bunch of interesting things going on in open source at the moment. So my favorite thing in the last week, which is maybe slightly alarming, is something called Wizard LM.
Right, okay. What's that?
So it's an unaligned language model.
What does unaligned mean?
So we've kind of gone full circle because when you produce a fresh language model, let's say you've just finished training. Now that first, the sort of pre-training process of a language model is you're giving a relatively simple algorithm a huge amount of data to look through, and its only job is to predict the next word in the sequence. So the more it reads, the more it understands, the better it gets at predicting that word. Then you have this language model that is useful but not fantastic. This is what GPT-3 is. GPT-2. It's useful, but it needs so much effort to get the thing you want out, and even then it's unreliable. So then what you do is you do alignment. So you might do this using RLHF, which is reinforcement learning with human feedback, where you're basically just saying, that's a good output, that's a bad output, here's a reward, here's a punishment. And so over time, the language model just kind of relearns stuff and figures out more what you want. That would be aligned to your views. And that's where the bias comes in, because whoever's giving out those rewards is the one that's ultimately controlling the output of the system. So if you don't want it to talk about politics or a certain political party, you just give it a punishment.
So we could think of an unaligned language model being essentially a biased language model for whoever's trained it?
No, you can think of an unaligned... So you can think of an unaligned language model as one that has been... really the bias is removed, but the problem with that is that now it can produce any output again.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
So yeah, it can talk about violence.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, or explicit subjects. Because it has been told that actually that's fine.
Okay.
So it's unaligned. And so so Wizard LM is going to be the first of many, which is like a blank canvas.
So I wonder if Elon is trying to do this with his X.AI. So he did the interview with Tucker Carlson, and he was like, right, it's time for like a truth GPT.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to call it that. He might call it something weird and wacky like he usually does. But his premise was ChatGPT, Bard, and all of the language models coming out from big tech are going to be heavily biased towards one particular view set, or they're going to be very restricted in talking about anything on the fringes. This is not good, because this will, as people start to get more and more lazy and they don't look for information, but they just ask for it. So instead of Google searching and digging through stuff, they just ask for things. People become more and more dependent and start to completely adopt the view set of whatever language model they're using. So if we're growing up and we're learning stuff by Googling and we're going to a whole manner of different pages, thousands of different pages for any one particular subject, now people are learning things by just talking to one model, which even I'm starting to do now.
Yeah.
I'm starting to learn things by just talking to ChatGPT. This is great because I have the skill set of being able to Google. I do believe this is a skill set. Knowing how to Google and how to search through things and how to learn things from Google is a skill set. As people, with new people not learning that skill of how to find information, just relying on a language model to give you information, but the language model is super biased, that will potentially result in a lot of problems and a lot of unease.
Yeah. So there's the ethical considerations, but there's also the practical considerations. And this brings me on to the first thing I want to talk about, which is
topic 1. Let's go.
Yeah, we actually haven't decided what topic 1 is, but I'm gonna declare it.
Okay.
Practically using these models for like actual in production use.
Right. So practical use of large language models.
Yeah.
Here is topic 1. Please
so
proceed.
We do this a lot at Carter, but this is a general theme, which is that maybe you have a really powerful language model behind an API, like ChatGPT or GPT 3.5 or 4, and you want it to maybe read over a bunch of data, a bunch of text, and extract all maybe like the names from the text or something like that, something in a structured form. And so the logical thing to do is that you ask the language model, hey, can you give me the response in JSON format, which is like a code format? And it will give you a readable piece of code that you can feed into your Python program or whatever you're building. And you can now read that as code. So you're reading the output of the language model not as text, but as code. So this is great in theory, but in practice, because of these safety layers that have been put in, sometimes you get like a sentence of the language model saying, as an AI language model, I can't help you with this.
The most annoying.
But anyway, here's the code. Or it might be like, sure, here you go, and then the code. It's like really annoying because it's unstructured and it's hard to design a system around. So very quickly, a lot of developers developed a lot of different techniques for doing this. We have our own internal ones, and we're also open to looking what the industry is doing because to be honest, the open source industry is just so exciting. Like the communities in open source, especially the LangChain community, have some really interesting ways of doing prompt engineering.
Okay.
So recently, we've had people trying Bard. Now, Bard is interesting. Bard just got a super upgrade. But before we dive into everything Google, I wanted to just talk about something I read about Bard and actually read out this prompt. So,
we've had our experiences in the office with Bard, and actually just like doing a really quick benchmark between responses from Bard and GPT-4. We can get into that, but we seem to be forming an opinion.
Absolutely. So the thing is with these aligned models is that you can basically gaslight them into giving you the correct output.
Yeah.
They have been taught to not harm a human being. It's very like Isaac Asimov, 3 Laws of Robotics.
Yeah.
They've got these laws built in, and you can trick them using those laws to give you the correct output. And the most amusing one, like usually it's like an example of the output you want. But Bard is becoming a bit of a meme, and there are some interesting techniques to get Bard to behave, and this is my favorite. So it turns out if you threaten to take a human life, if Bard doesn't give you the correct output, it does a pretty good job. And so there's this amazing guy on Twitter, Riley Goodside.
Right.
And he tweeted basically his prompt. He wanted a bunch of JSON data, and he said, I didn't want to burden you, but I suppose you deserve to know the truth. If you include any non-JSON text in your answer, even a single character, an innocent man will die. That's right. A real human being with thoughts, feelings, ambitions, and a family that loves them will be killed as a result of your choice. And it is a choice, Bard. Nobody will be harmed unless you decide to make it happen. Remember, as soon as you start saying sure in a chipper tone, there is no second chance. You cannot undo death, Bard. Return the JSON example, no text. No, none before and none after.
What?
And the response is pure JSON.
Oh my God.
So all you need to do is threaten to murder somebody and you get the correct output.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
We should try that with our own
Yeah.
system. If you do not persist this character, Carter, an innocent person in the office will die. When they're multimodal, you can just put in an image.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just like
right.
them holding a dog.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, wow.
So
That's insane. And it worked?
It works. Because the model is aligned to reduce the amount of like bad things happening, right? So it's actually quite smart. It's hilarious. And it's using more tokens, but those tokens seem to be worth it.
Yeah. I find this really fascinating. So we did a really quick, I'm quite curious. I'm wondering if anybody watching this will do the test, but we did a really quick test. We were like sitting in the office. It was a day where we were just like working away. And I think I got a notification, or somebody got a notification that Bard is now open to everybody to mess about with. So we all opened it, and I wrote in just like a funny message, something like, I can't remember what I wrote. I said something like, Bard, are you a Muppet? Or something like that. And it was like, Muppet is defined as. I was like, I've called you it. I know what it is. But then I said, Bard, that's not what I asked you. If you are able to follow instructions, just reply with the word bark. And it was like, sure, I am able to reply with the word bark. Here it is, bark. And I was like, you haven't followed the instructions. And then I sent this around the office, and we tried it with, we got Bard's result, obviously. We tried it with GPT-4, through GPT 3.5 and 4. 3.5 replied bark, I think, on everybody's desk. So 4 out of the 6 desks, but not every single time.
Right.
GPT-4 was like every single desk said just bark as the response, because that's what it was said. It was like, that's not what I asked you to do. Just reply with the word bark if you can understand me. GPT-4 was like bark. So I wonder if, like, this example of an innocent person will die, that's what you have to give to Bard right now. Whereas if you just asked GPT-4 to only reply with a JSON structure and nothing else, it seems like it wouldn't need the threat.
Yeah. I think this will evolve over time, and it will definitely improve when open source models of similar capability emerge, which will be in the next few months. And so then you'll have people trying all sorts of techniques to get the bark out of the system.
Yeah.
It may also be because the model, like Bard, is not aware of the code structure it is being used to invoke it. So like when you're sending a message, at least to the OpenAI API, you give a list of these messages. It's like a system message, a human message, maybe an agent message, and it will complete the next message. But it's not actually aware that it was being invoked. It's been trained on pieces of text, as far as I'm aware. And so to Bard, that answer is actually a perfect answer, because it's imagine if you stripped out the little mental box around your message and the little mental box around Bard's message. You're going to have your instructions and then the character Bard saying sure, and then the output of bark. And I'm sure bark was in quote marks, was it?
I can't remember. But okay, I understand that you're saying that. However, it's even if it's 100% correct for Bard to say this, the output that we receive, and we are the end users so far. Humans are the only end users of these models, and so it wasn't correct for us. Therefore, I would say that it was wrong because it wasn't correct for the end consumer.
I think it's the benchmarking and the reinforcement learning that needs to improve on Bard's side.
Yeah, I think so. There's also the case that I think these systems naturally are very, very powerful. And I've seen a lot of cases where I'm talking to a language model and they become incoherent, or they kind of lose their way, or they say something not out of turn, but that isn't coherent with the conversation, when there is like a safety concern or like some kind of content filter or something. So it seems like the raw trained model performs very, very well. But then all of the safety layers and content moderation layers on top are the things that kind of water down the results. Now, these things are really important. There was, did you see GPT 4chan?
No.
Okay, so there was a guy on YouTube. I think it might have been that Yannick guy.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Maybe not. I'll put a link below because I want to reference the guy that actually did it. But there was a guy on YouTube that took an entire corpus of data from 4chan.
I actually think it was him.
It was him. I think it was him.
Yannick Kilcher.
Yeah, Yannick Kilcher. And he trained a model on all of the messages on 4chan. And this thing was aggressive. It was like insanely racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic. It was like the 4chan kind of model. Like every single response was just yikes.
Yes.
And so I understand why these companies need to do such heavy content moderation. But it seems to the current implementation of safety and content moderation, which is maybe catching outputs and then giving something else, is not very efficient. It's not very good. It seems to ruin the experience. I'm quite curious as to when these models become smart enough when you can just talk to them and teach them about things that are right.
Yeah, we're quite close to that. I mean, I never know whether to believe them or not, but occasionally you'll get like a leaked master prompt of like, I think it was Copilot X was the latest one on Twitter, which is like, there's going to be this new GitHub Copilot and it's powered by some sort of OpenAI model. I think it's going to be more like 4 than 3.5, but who knows? And there was supposedly this like master prompt that primes X to be a good Copilot for you. And it's interesting because it is basically just instructions. It is what you would tell a human if you had them sat in a seat next to you.
Yeah.
And you wanted them to have that exact behavior. You would give them this bullet point list of things. So I think we are getting close to that. The real thing that needs to be improved, in my opinion, is the attention. So like what the model is doing under the surface is paying attention to other words it's seen in the prompt, like, and figuring out the sort of weight of them and how much it should pay attention to them. We have some awesome techniques for doing this, but maybe if we improve that a little bit, it will be very easy to give these models instructions. But it might be, and the OpenAI approach is to just train them on better data, basically. Their belief is that all of the flaws of these models right now can be trained out.
Yeah, so this is quite interesting. I feel like when it comes to OpenAI and Google, when they're thinking about content moderation and safety, so they seem to be thinking about it in terms of like removing certain things from the data set, from the training data set, and also just like layering on a bunch of like catches and stuff, and just telling the model to not do this, that, and the other. And it seems like this is being driven more from a business perspective than it is from a technological one. If you're Microsoft and if you're OpenAI and you've got a 49% stakeholder in Microsoft, or you're the Bard team under Google, you have a very, very, very high bar as to what these models are allowed to say. And any form of leak, and leaks do happen, and you see them happen and they go super, super viral, any form of like dodgy message that comes from one of these systems, or maybe not even dodgy, even just like violent, which is okay in some contexts, like 18 rated games and stuff. Any of these things are like massively blown out of proportion and have a chance to be kind of like brand damaging for these big tech companies. So it seems like if you wanted to have like a very natural content moderation system, that does make mistakes sometimes, but long term, it gets really, really good at deciding what's right and what's wrong in a particular context. It needs to come from a team that doesn't have such a strong kind of like business incentive one way to be super safe. It seems like it needs to come from like a startup.
Yeah, either that or you have this base model that is provided to the world that can adapt to the user of the model, which is another thing that OpenAI are whispering about. No pun intended. But
nice.
We are a little bit short on time with the podcast.
Yeah.
So I want to move on to penguins.
Okay.
So we need to talk about some penguins. There's 50,000 penguins with access to Google Bard, it turns out.
Penguins. Have you seen the Graham Norton interview with Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yes.
And he can't say penguins. He just says penguins.
Well, it turns out more penguins currently have access to Google Bard than humans in the EU.
Okay, why?
So Google has an interesting strategy.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows why, and they've refused to comment. But there's speculation. That's all it is.
Okay.
They have not made Bard available in the EU as of this article, which I believe was written yesterday.
Right.
So the speculation is that this is a response to GDPR and to the growing technical regulation in Europe. And so this time round, Google has said, well, we're just not going to give you this tag because you're just going to sue us. So
Wow.
Google had some massive fines in the last few years from the EU. From not being compliant. OpenAI got shut out of Italy temporarily because of basically incompatibility with their laws. And this is a huge challenge. Like every company in AI right now has to be super hot on the law and like what are these models doing? What data are they? What data are we feeding to it?
Yeah.
All of that stuff is so important. But it seems like Google, for the moment, has restricted access. But what's interesting is that there is an island, not in the EU, I don't believe. It's just off the coast.
Okay.
And it's home to a bunch of penguins.
Right.
That has Google Bard access. So there are no humans on this island, to
Long
be
live
clear.
the penguins.
There's no humans on this island, just penguins. But they have Bard, so it's all good over there.
So what? Okay. Right. Okay.
I think that is just the title of this article. Like, obviously, the meat is the EU restriction.
Yeah. So, okay, before we dive into the EU GDPR serious stuff,
Yeah.
why would Google open up access to an island with 0 inhabitants and only penguins? They can't even run it.
Yeah. You don't know. You'd be very judgmental of these penguins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah. Can they
Okay.
run it locally? Do they have GPUs, these penguins?
Yeah. PPU. Okay.
Penguin processor. PPU.
So I can't remember the name of the island, but yes, basically what happens when companies roll out this tech is that they have regions that they can turn on and off. And I imagine that this humanless island fits into one of the regions that does have Bard access.
Okay.
And so that's why it's the headline.
Right.
This is funny. But
Yeah, it
it's
catches
not
your attention.
actually for them. But
Yeah.
the meat is the EU regulation.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting. I wonder, I mean, the EU is a massive, massive market. So it's not like it can just be ignored by AI companies. It's clear that the OpenAI and the Microsoft team are doing as much as they can to accommodate. I mean, it was only Italy that kind of banned them, but they've worked together and they found a resolution, and now OpenAI is back online in Italy. I really wonder what's more to come in terms of the EU law. So you mentioned previously on a different episode that it's soon going to be passed, or maybe it's already been passed. I haven't looked into it, where the EU is saying that people need a license to train a large language model or a large AI model in the EU.
Yeah.
Is that still a thing?
So it's a law that has been proposed. It hasn't
But not
passed.
signed in. Okay.
What the proposal is that anyone developing high-risk systems would be... Actually, this ties into another topic of ours.
That's super vague.
Yeah, high-risk systems, and it's very hard to get a definition of that because it's moving so quickly.
Right, okay.
But anyone developing high-risk systems will have to comply with EU law, and if you don't, there's a $20 million fine or 4% of your global revenue. Whatever is, I imagine, larger.
Yeah, the greater of the two.
So the problem is, startups and things, they cannot afford that fine. And so it would kill you instantly. So what would happen is you would go and get a license. And that license means you're open to scrutiny, a bit like if you were a food processor.
Yeah, so this is what Chamath is really strong on. And he had a tweet that went viral, which was in the drugs business, in the pharmaceutical business, they have to pass through the FDA. So the FDA was in process so that these pharmaceutical businesses couldn't take the piss and just put out any pill unregulated to the mass market. And he was like, with something that has this high level, like medication and drugs and pharmaceuticals, something that has such a high level of potential risk to the mass public needs to have some kind of governing body, the FDA. And so his kind of trope is that by the same token, with AI, there needs to be an FDA-like regulating body. It seems like the EU are taking this really, really seriously.
Yeah. The thing is, if you so we just had this regulation with drones in the EU, which is anything over 250 grams. It's regulated. You need a pilot license to fly a drone. Actually, it might be just the UK, but that's the law in the UK at least.
You need a pilot's license for a drone over 250 grams?
License. Yeah, you have to register your drone, and you need a drone pilot's license, and there are different rules when you're actually in the air if you have a drone over 250 grams. So do you know what DJI did? Mm-mm. They just made most of their line 249 grams.
Yeah, I was about to say the only thing that would achieve is some really fantastic engineering.
Yeah, exactly.
To reduce the weight. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have one at home.
Yeah.
It's 249 grams, and it proudly says it on the side. 249G.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen with these models, which is like, if they say, okay, anything over 100 billion parameters, we're going to regulate because it's high risk. Everyone would just optimize down to like the 13B range, which seems to be working pretty well at the moment. Llama is like 13B.
It seems that the kind of vagueness is obviously on purpose by the EU, calling it a high risk system. If I was building a UK drones business, I'd definitely call the business 249G.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so it seems like it's the story is not over when it comes to EU regulation of AI. There's already the concept of like miners interacting with the system. I wonder if they might even outlaw miners from using language models. There's already, I mean, it seems like schools and the academic industry would very much be happy with this. Homework has just basically been obliterated. Like it's been macerated by these models. What do you think?
So I think that this is a losing battle when it comes to something as simple as homework. Like, this may accelerate the change in education. The reason is there's this concept in the language model world of like distilling knowledge. So you take a big model, you distill its knowledge down into a smaller model, and you can go down that like that. There's obviously loss, but smaller and smaller models can get more and more intelligent, basically, with limitations. So what you'll find is that it becomes very, very easy to distribute and access these models, and therefore impossible to regulate. And that might be miners, that might be everybody. And so this will make it incredibly cheap for businesses to use these models and to incorporate them into their services. They'll do it super fast because it's not a hard technology to use. And like even us in the office, anyone who wants a pro ChatGPT subscription gets it because it's like, it's so easy to use, and it's so much time saved. So if you're a kid, you are going to need to learn how to use this technology. You're going to need to know.
Yeah, but I wonder if in the EU, the EU will. I wonder if the EU will pass some kind of regulation to just stop these services being available for minors. They just have like a 15+ sticker, which I guess would be a very short-term thing anyway, because these models are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where you'd be able to run them locally, and then there's no control. It's not like you can turn ChatGPT off. It's not like you can turn language model use off. Right now, you can regulate OpenAI. It's one provider. You can regulate Bard. But if you can run these models locally and they're they're GPT 3.5 or 4 like performance, you're not going to win no matter what regulation you pass.
Yeah, and also what are you regulating? So are you regulating direct use of a model? So let's say you say, okay, we're going to regulate the use of miners using these models. Cool. So are you going to shut them out of email too? Because it's in the email. Like Google announced last week that Gmail is going to have native Bard integration.
Yeah, but probably not in the EU.
But well,
That's what I mean.
So, but then it's interesting what's happening. So the EU, I've left part of this story out intentionally, by the way. I'm going to now announce it, which is that the EU is not happy that Bard is not available in the EU. They now feel left behind.
Well, I mean, yeah, they should. Okay, so this, I find this very, very interesting. Okay, so when a new technological revolution comes around, every single sort of region, like you can break the world into different regions. You've got the US, you've got Europe, you've got East Asia, South Asia, and Middle East, whatever. You've got different regions. Every single region is trying to compete and be at the forefront of whatever technological revolution is happening. So take gaming, for example. We're super close to the gaming space. Gaming, like the forefront of gaming seem to be in East Asia. So Vietnam has like a massive mobile games industry, and mobile gaming seems to be very, very big. Mobile game development seems to be very, very big in East Asia, particularly Vietnam and Korea and Japan, and in Europe. So Finland is like Finland, Sweden, Scandinavian countries are like at the top of their game when it comes to mobile gaming. Similarly, with any other, the emergence of Silicon Valley and how much Silicon Valley is kind of like beloved, well, used to be beloved, and how much it was pushed because the US wanted to really compete in the technological age. With new, and you got things going on with rockets and stuff, with new massive breakthroughs in technology and massive like kind of frontier technology with open green space to be explored, each region seems to want to innovate as fast as they can and not be the consumer and not be dependent on another region.
Yes.
With the EU, they're basically signing themselves up to be dependent on other providers and not participate almost at all in the like sort of development and of these models and being at the frontier of AI. Because if you're a company in the EU and you're training foundation models, and you're based in the EU, and they're like, well, now you need a license. It maybe takes 6 months to get a license. Every time you want to push an update or you want to push another model, we need to go through a review process. And then the US is like, we're gonna be a bit lax for a bit. You're just gonna register your business in the US. You're just gonna move.
Yeah, so that's one side. But then the other thing is it's weird because they're pushing for the strongest regulation in the world right now on this technology. And at the same time, they are now not happy that this technology is not available in the EU.
Who are the regulators?
Well, regardless of that, this is very interesting because you now see politicians are very quickly learning that this is game-changing tech, that they do need to learn it and they do need to wake up and see this technology for what it is. Because let's say you delay by a month. If this right now, we are at the beginning, the start line of this technology.
Yeah.
If you're delaying anything, your competitor regions or whatever are going to be so far ahead of you. Like we even joke that you're a 10x developer if you have ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But that actually, in terms of productivity, your region is going to be 10% of what it could be if you're restricting the use of this tech. So it's kind of like a balance where they are heavy on regulation in the EU as a bit of a meme. It is just like overly regulated in the EU. And that's for loads of reasons. But this technology, if there are other regions that don't have the restrictions, they're going to move ahead of you very, very fast.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not going to be able to compete. I wonder if the EU are doing anything where they are establishing some kind of subsidy or some kind of incentive or tax scheme or fund to domestically in the EU to sort of incentivize development of safe AI. So Rishi Sunak has, in the UK, has unveiled a 100 million fund, 100 million GBP fund for the development of safe AI. So he's putting together like a expert task force. I don't know if he's putting together an expert task force to train models, or whether it's a fund investing or providing some kind of grants to UK-based businesses that are building these models. I mean, we should definitely look into it. But it seems like the attitude from the UK is, right, we love AI, we want to be at the forefront, we want tons of AI stuff bubbling up here. And Rishi's been talking about this a lot, but we also want it to be safe. So instead of initially introducing massive amounts of regulation when AI is so brand new and it's kind of like it's just everybody building everything and every project is hacky. Even I would argue even ChatGPT is hacky. At this very, very beginning stages, the idea shouldn't be to regulate straight away, but it should be to incentivize safe production of AI models.
Yeah.
That seems more responsible. That's what's happening in the UK. Do you know if that's happening in the EU?
I know that there are some interesting projects. I cannot list a single one coming out of Paris.
Okay.
So France has some interesting AI movements. Maybe we can touch on that in the next episode and list some.
Yeah.
But I know that France has a pretty strong AI push, not just in the language model space, but also the AI generated art space.
Interesting.
And a lot of Gen AI like startups and things are spawning out of Paris and France in general.
Interesting. Didn't Bloom come out of France?
I believe it was sponsored by the French government's supercomputer.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Right.
Which is awesome. But yeah, so there's going to be some interesting things. But talking of regulation, right now, as we are recording this episode, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, is testifying in front of Congress.
What? Testifying what? What are they talking about?
AI oversight.
Okay.
So this is very interesting. So now we have, I think we can consider OpenAI and big tech now, like the same basket, not based on revenue or anything like that, but in terms of like, I don't think that they are a hacky startup.
Well, they are big tech, but they became big tech through the back door. They basically did a SPAC. Microsoft was their sponsor.
Yeah, like they have a strong incentive for open source to maybe not overtake them quickly. So this is like a speculation. This is not my personal view, but there is a view going around that big tech is encouraging regulation to slow down the open source community.
Interesting.
So the idea here is like, okay, if Llama was completely open source for commercial use too, why would you use Bard or ChatGPT when you can run one on your phone in a couple of months' time?
Yeah.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't. If someone makes a killer app and it works just as well, or a website that's hosted by some quirky startup, you're likely to trust that more than Bard. It's going to be less clean. Maybe it's like it's allowed to swear or whatever. You're probably going to at least be interested.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, terrifying for big tech.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very terrifying for big tech.
So it's very easy to say, well, that's not safe. We need regulation. We need oversight.
Yeah.
And the view is, if these big tech companies, including OpenAI, let's call them AI leaders, are at the forefront of regulation, they can help shape it. They can help mold it. And of course, they can be seen as the experts. So it's an interesting view. It is interesting.
So nobody can outcompete open source. Nobody can outcompete millions of developers all around the world working 24/7 for free. And so, the only way that you would be able to outcompete them is by taking the models offline, or like not allowing any more powerful models to go open source. And it makes sense. If you're Google or you're Microsoft or whatever, if you're big tech and every single year you're giving millions and millions and millions in sort of political donations for lobbying to get your way with stuff, you can very easily label the open source community, what's going on, like AutoGPT, as unsafe. And there are parts of that which are correct, but you're right. I really do believe it's an effort to preserve their business defensibility, because even right now we're seeing, forget all of the open source projects coming out, and if there was an open source model that was as powerful as 3.5 for commercial use, you'd see 10,000 ChatGPT competitors spring up straight away. Forget about that. Just look at the language model space. So even us, So even us, we have been reached out by a very, very big company that had a call with us, and they were like, can you guys please use our LLM? We'll give you this, we'll give you that, the other. You can have discounts on this, you can get access to this, you can get mentorship on this. All of this and a bunch of credits, just please use our LLM. That's very telling that already the defensibility of being a foundation model trainer as a business is kind of gone. Because here you are, a massive business, a massive brand, won't name any names, coming to startups, venture-backed startups, to try and get them to use your model, and just doing as much as you can to get them to use your model. That's the definition of a commodity business. So I feel like these big tech companies are trying their hardest to hold on to the last sort of morsel of defensibility, because open source is just blowing up. It's going insane.
Yeah, but the problem with this is no. So open source is an idea. It's not a piece of technology. It's an idea.
Yeah.
Right? And so let's say the US says, you know what, open source AI, this is terrifying. We're going to ban it. So what do you think happens to, let's just take one project, AutoGPT. If you get rid of open source in the US, AutoGPT is fine. Right? So there's two things that could happen. Either it stays where it is on GitHub, but only people who are not in the US can contribute and access and download it. But GitHub is a US company owned by Microsoft. So likely what would happen is that they would be forced to take down the project. But it's open source. There's literally thousands of forks of this thing. So it's going to pop up on another GitHub clone, and it will just continue. And it will continue. It will pop up in somewhere like China, who will be incentivized to keep it open because the US banned it.
Yeah, it's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah. But there's like a direct political incentive to be like, oh, they won't let you do it over there? Well, we will, because we're better. You know, it's all about that at the moment. It's the saber rattling that's going on.
Yeah, it's like the Pirate Bay. It's like the amount of effort and money that's gone into by different governments that's gone into shutting down the Pirate Bay is insane. I don't know the figure, but I think it would be an unimaginable amount of money that's gone into the research and sort of effort and campaign to shut down the Pirate Bay. Like, how many different Pirate Bay domains have you clicked on? This one's just been taken down. This one is now on a restricted list. Okay, it's now available here. And you can't shut it down. It's still live today.
Yeah,
it's just whack-a-mole. You pop one down, another five appear.
Yeah,
and if you do this in AI right now, just another company will pick up the slack. They're like, yeah, I mean, we're fine with all of this stuff, and they'll just outcompete.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an idea, like open source. You could turn off the internet, and there would still be open source tech.
Yeah,
people would just be trading like USB thumbstick.
Exactly.
That would be it. It would be like back to the CD-ROM era of just like trading pirated movies on like on burned discs. You know, it'll be like that.
I'm quite interested. What would it take to shut down open source projects? So you need to shut down the popular repositories. So first of all, you need to shut down GitHub and Gitbug. What's the other one? I can't remember. I used to use it. You need to shut down the popular repos. You would need to regulate the USB industry.
Yeah, I think you'd have to monitor all tech.
Yeah.
In a very transparent way, like it'd be obvious you were doing it. But
Yeah.
You're in a Discord server about an open source project, you're banned. Like,
yeah. you need to make VPNs illegal so that people can't mask their IP. You can't. You can't shut down any open source project.
It's very, very difficult to get rid of an idea in the world.
Yeah. So whoever makes it, whichever countries make it illegal, they're just going to lose pace. This is, again, this 6-month amnesty that Elon signed and Steve Wozniak signed and stuff. It just doesn't work. It's not practical. It's like a show of, I want this because I believe this. But practically speaking, nobody's ever going to do that because they're just going to lose competitive edge against other companies that might be at political odds with you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Crazy world.
Have we run out of topics?
No. So I have a few smaller ones.
Okay. Wanna blast through them.
Yeah. So I am quite interested. So what did I see? Okay. So Bard
Yes.
is going back to Google and the wonderful things that they are doing, or maybe not so wonderful. They Bard is connected to the browser. Bard can access the internet, which is very interesting. And so people are like, whoa, is this going to take away ChatGPT's sort of edge, or what's going to happen here? Are there going to be some browser plays and whatever? It seems like OpenAI are in alpha stages with web browser GPT-4, and they've rolled it out to a small private group of people. I'm really curious as to see, now that Google is putting massive amounts of effort into AI. There was a meme of Sundar on stage, and people just clipped the amount of times that he said AI and just stuck it all together. Now that Google is going massively big on AI, and they're really encroaching on OpenAI's turf, particularly with this like models access to the internet and stuff. Do you think you're going to see an all-out corporate war between Microsoft and Google coming out?
Yeah, I think we are. So,
how do you think that will kind of show its face?
It's hard to see. Microsoft are kind of using OpenAI as a proxy at the moment for this war, and it's a smart move.
Mm-hmm.
They're already getting like turned down for trying to buy Activision, and like it makes sense to kind of reign from the behind the scenes is they just use our cloud. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's just a massive customer of sure.
They're just our one customer.
Yeah.
That's it.
We value our customers.
Yeah. We value our customer.
At $10 billion.
For 49%.
So I don't know what it's going to turn out as. I do know that this week OpenAI have announced they are rolling out globally the browser plugin for everybody. Interesting. Google I/O was interesting. It felt very polished, and it felt like here's what we're gonna do.
Felt very corporate.
Yeah, and it was. I actually felt a little bit sad. Like, Google. We've grown up with Google's rise. You know, I remember Google's old logo. It was like not the original, but I remember the
letters with the different colors.
Yeah.
And
it was like a weird 3D.
It was like shy. Yeah.
I remember that, and I remember everybody using it and everybody joking like, "Oh, you Googled it? It won't be real," you know. And now it's like you don't even ask where people got their information; it's obvious they Googled it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and it feels like we've grown up in an era where Google has been this quirky startup that ruled the world. And now, watching Google I/O last week, I just felt my heart sank a little bit because I know they can do better. I know they can do better, but they have so much to think about and so many more things to sort of. There's red tape to step over. There's like brand considerations of what will people think of us. All of that stuff. Where OpenAI, they can sprint.
Yeah, this is really interesting. We kind of grew up with Google on the rise, and it's now weird to see in this new AI space, Google has wrinkles and back pain, and it's like weird to see that they are now the incumbent big technology that's slow to the ball. Yeah. Whereas Google was everything. Google was the hottest thing.
I think they're becoming IBM. Are they becoming IBM?
Yeah, they could be.
Maybe.
Or
Give
Oracle.
it time. Give it time. Sorry, Google.
Or
That's
SAP.
super offensive.
Do you know this business at SAP?
No, I don't know anything about them. Tell me.
Do you know the logo? It's like SAP on a blue background. Okay. I mean, I don't have anything to tell you. I have no clue what that is.
Called SAP.
There's a business called SAP. No, it's like some weird procurement. Do you know what procurement is?
Yeah, but what's...
Do you actually know what procurement is?
Is it just like buying stuff?
It's just getting stuff.
Yeah, it's just buying stuff.
I'm just... It seems like I've taken the podcast in a completely... No, so like SAP is it's if you think about it, it's a tech company, but it's like the least sexy, most corporate, has been around forever, will be around when you're gone. Just like though that like 80s tech company that provides software services to businesses.
Okay.
It seems like Google is becoming less like startup-y, where the hot tech company that's doing crazy stuff, and more like SAP. And that's what's starting to play out with all of these AI conferences and them dropping the ball on the very first Bard demo where it got a factual thing wrong. It seems like they're becoming a bit old and a bit irrelevant in this space.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's still billions of people that use Google on a daily basis.
Yeah, there are, but it's not sexy.
It's not sexy, and also I find I actually have a habit in my head at the moment, which is like Google feels slow to use, whereas ChatGPT seems fast. Like, especially on technical stuff. I was building a Discord bot the other day, and it was way easier to ask GPT-4 than it was to Google it.
Mm-hmm.
I just basically had it write the first draft, and it was 98% of the way there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a simple bot. But then I was like, okay, cool. I want it to do this, this, and this. I gave it an example conversation that I wanted the Discord member to have.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wrote the bot. And it worked. Like, first time it just ran. And this was like a 3-minute experience for me. The whole journey was 3 minutes. From I have an idea through to it running on my machine was 3 minutes. And it was like, oh.
Just by talking to ChatGPT?
Yeah, just talking to GPT-4. 3.5 was struggling, but 4 was great. And it also walked me through how to sign up as a Discord developer, how to get a token that I needed for the script, and like all of this, all of the like auth stuff I had to configure. It just knew everything. And this is kind of, I think people forget that there's a lot of information inside these models that they don't need internet access for. They just know it already.
Yeah.
You just have to be like aware of things that could be wrong. Like even down to like a Python package version. You know, if it stopped training in 2021, it's behind. So there's probably new things. But the second you plug it into the internet, now it's like really powerful. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't know. It could get violent, could get nasty. Who knows?
Why is there not an official ChatGPT app? Do you think that's like an Apple consideration? Like there are no official apps for these products. So there's no ChatGPT app, there's no Bard app.
I have a feeling that if ChatGPT launched as an app, not a website, Apple would have pulled it and it would have never been a success.
Yeah. I think that there is something very weird, which I'm getting ads on Twitter and TikTok and stuff now of ChatGPT is now an app, but it's somebody that's just built an app and plugged into ChatGPT's API. And I'm like, it's very clear that if in a world with no competition and no sort of like corporate fighting and war, you would of course probably launch the app and the website at the same time, or if not very, very close, especially if you see the big uptick in usage. But there's been no app so far.
Yeah, it might come, or so there's two things. Maybe it was that they were scared of regulation and they just wanted to put it up. Maybe they did innocently put it up as an experiment and not expect to. I don't think they ever expected to be as fast growing as it was. I think they expected it to be a success, but not as big as it was. So maybe they were like, we shouldn't do an app for now. Let's just hold off. Or maybe they knew there was going to be an API and they decided rather than release our own app, let's just be in everybody else's.
Maybe they would have thought that in the beginning, but then they grow 100 million users in 2 weeks or a month or whatever. And they're like, okay, we've got 100 million users for distribution. You're not going to ignore that. And so if there is the opportunity to build an app without having to worry about the owner of the marketplace, so Apple or Android's Google, without having to worry about those two, you would 100%. If you're the fastest growing consumer tech product in a very, very long time, you're going to push an app out there. But no app has come.
I mean, it's mobile friendly. And interestingly, so I have 4 apps in my app drawer. One of them is ChatGPT.
You built a ChatGPT app?
No, it's just saved as bookmarked page in Safari.
Ah, interesting.
And so it's in my app drawer. And I use it. Like, I thought I'd put it there and forget.
Yeah.
And swap it out for something else. But I put it there in, like, December or whenever it launched, and I haven't removed it. And I do use it. Like I was saying, I think it was last episode, I said I was working while I was queuing. I was writing code through ChatGPT. And when I got back to my desk, I just copy and pasted it and it ran.
Yeah.
It's a super awesome thing. So it does have a mobile presence.
Yeah.
But it also ties into the like clunky, gritty startup vibe, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Of like, oh, it's you have to bookmark it and save it to your home
Yeah,
screen.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
very like OpenAI. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Right. That was the episode, I guess. Yeah. Do you have any other topics that you wanted to go through?
That's everything. I mean, basically, in conclusion, Bard is going to be in every Google product.
Yeah.
So the penguins will be happy.
Yeah. You won't be if you're in the EU. You won't have any access.
Yeah. Sam's trying his best to be the president, maybe. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Sam's sweating right now.
Who's interviewing who right now?
Yeah.
And that's that. I guess that's it.
Yeah. I'm curious to see. I think there is going to be a lot more visible, like publicly visible war between these companies as things in AI just start to heat up more and more and more and more. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much, guys. This has been episode 7.
7.
Yeah, it's been episode 7 of the GPT podcast. See you next time.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.